Hey, J.C Agajanian here, broker associate with eXp, top grossing agent with the Whissel Realty Group, summarizing for you the mastermind that the Fast Forward Network put together for us each week. Let's get straight in. All right, what's happening? JC here with another Fast Forward Movement mastermind recap for you. And today we had some few great topics. First of all, markets changed. So what are your best practices in working open houses right now? Another person had a question about working with contingent clients, and that was basically not an option up until just a month or two ago, and now it's back on the table. So what are the best practices for working with contingent clients? And another person had a question about long-term follow-up, dealing with the shifting market and making sure you stay in front of people as time goes on, because as we all know, the fortune is in the follow-up. So let's get into the first one, talking about open houses. The first person who popped up and gave their opinion on this subject was Ed Kaminsky. He's a killer in Manhattan Beach, high-end beach market in LA. Going to do, I think, 300 million in volume this year. And he gave us some great ideas that are not new. We should know them. If you haven't heard them before, they're good here. But basically the idea was, don't just go do an open house. Make sure you do all the important activities surrounding that open house before and after to make the most of it. So what does that look like? Being proactive up front, door knocking the area, right? Circle prospecting the area. And he talked about a great trick that I've used myself over the years, and I can't say that I do it every time, but I've definitely used it from time to time, and it's scheduling 2 open houses on the same day. And you might think, what the heck is that for, right? Well, the idea is the first one is not public knowledge. The first one is only for neighbors, so we market it as a exclusive neighbors only preview to the property. And the only way these neighbors know about this exclusive neighbors only preview before the public open house is by you door knocking and or calling and or having door drops done for you, right? So you have an exclusive event. Often what we'll do is we'll go above and beyond, and we'll have at least some sort of refreshments, if not full-blown catering for the neighbors only event. And the cool thing about this is that it breaks up the attendees of your open house into 2 groups. First of all, the private exclusive neighbors only event is basically potential down the road sellers. These are only people who are kind of nosy neighbors, and so we're maximizing that, and we're knowing who we're talking to when they come through the door. Then that phases out, and now the public open house is largely going to be prospective buyers. So you already have a different frame of mind when that second open house starts. And of course, if there's any refreshments that haven't been used, other catering, that's now available to the public as well. So it works great, and it's a great way to maximize your time and energy you're putting into that open house. He also mentioned using QR codes to register your clients as opposed to a typical sheet or an iPad app of some sort. They click and they register, goes directly into the CRM. And then what he does is he makes sure to get names of people when he has conversations so that he can connect the notes that he's taking with the QR code entry that's already in his CRM when he gets back to the office. Kyle Whissel, one of the leaders of the Fast Forward movement, founder of it, he chimed in and said, listen, you need to do a lot of open house signs, more than you think you need. And what you need to do is pony up and pay someone to do it, because it is a chore and a pain in the butt to do them. And it's one of the main reasons I don't like open houses. I personally am pretty good in front of people. I've sourced a lot of my business over the years from open houses, but I hate doing them. So one of the things that I've done to help me get over that hump and do them more often is pay someone to put my signs out, because I don't just put 5 or 10 signs out. I do 20, 30, 50 signs on some occasions, depending on where the property is and what's needed. And if you have 5 to 10 signs on one major intersection, that's going to catch some eyes. That's different. You're doing something different than most agents are doing. You're going above and beyond. Potential sellers are going to notice that, and you're going to be, extremely visible for potential buyers. Someone who maybe didn't see it on Zillow, who didn't see it in the MLS that there's an open house, you're going to catch a lot more people that way. So what he talked about is a practice that I've adopted years ago, which is using a Google map and specifically putting in annotations exactly where you want those signs to be, whether they're an A-frame, whether they're a stake that goes in the sign, the Diablo stakes, and having them put them exactly where you want them to be. Again, he said 30 to 50 signs for each one. Mary Maloney is another team lead here in San Diego County, and she said that in addition to the typical A-frames and Diablo stakes, she also has gigantic sandwich board style A-frames that are like oversized, kind of big bulky plastic signs, and she puts those in strategic locations as well, and they really are another thing to break up the monotony. They catch eyeballs and they have good awareness. So she says that that's one of her tricks. She also is going after sellers when she does opens by stopping by to the 5, maybe 10 nearest neighbors, drop them a little bottle of wine with a business card and say, hey, listen, we're about to drive a lot of traffic to this neighborhood. I wanted to apologize in advance, give you a little bottle of wine so you can relax, and my information just in case you run into any issues. Are people going to call her right away and say, hey, come list my house? Probably not. It could happen. But the thing is, that's another thing making you different, and it's going to stand out, and they're going to remember that if and when they think of selling their place in the near future. So that was a pretty cool strategy as well. John Glutch is a boss who runs teams in 3 areas. He's from the Phoenix area. He's got a Las Vegas team, and now he's got a Coronado, California team as well. And he also said that similar to what Ed was talking about with the QR codes, that he uses QR codes, but he uses a different approach. He has a kind of like a small sign with a map of the area and tons of little dots representing properties for sale all over the place. And he says that he doesn't even really talk about it much. It just has a QR code and it says, click here for a free list of off-market properties. We can give that to you, no problem. They click on it and it doesn't take them to a website. What it does is it queues up a text message in their phone to text him directly with a pre-written message saying, I'd love to have that list of off-market properties. And then it goes, so you've got an auto-filled text message, you've got with a phone number, auto-filled message, and now you know that you're going to have quality information as opposed to nonsense, so that you aren't able to track down that buyer after the open house is over. So that was another great tip that I hadn't heard before, and I think I'm probably going to implement myself into our business. Some people may think it was kind of a follow-up thought after that. There was a couple questions like, what do you do? How are you finding off-market properties? There's a whole list of strategies. One of the things that we do within our brokerage is we use a system called Raven because of the new clear cooperation rules I'm sure you're familiar with. One thing that you can do is share any off-market property as long as they're in your brokerage. So because we are part of EXP, we are a large brokerage, and so any of the various teams throughout the county or anywhere really can legally be exposed to off-market properties because we are keeping it technically within the brokerage. So there's other ways you can do that. You can dig up lists of expireds. You can find FSBOs. You can find other things that are not on Zillow or the MLS for your clients, but that's one of the go-tos for us because it's a system that we've already got in place, and it works pretty well. There's another talk of using QR codes. QR codes seem to be experiencing a renaissance since COVID. They had kind of come on in the mid-2000s, late 2000s, and then died pretty quickly. And since COVID, with all the menus and everything, they've really made a resurgence and are being used in all kinds of ways. Cameron McClellan said that he uses them to point to a high note presentation. This is another piece of tech that we use in our business. Basically, it's kind of a one-page mini website that you can send a shortened URL link to, and you can load it with all kinds of content. You can load it with links, you can with little paragraphs describing each thing, you can load it with PDFs, you can add almost anything to a high note, and it presents it nicely in different chunks as you go down. And in that high note, he has buyer guides, he has mortgage information, home search information, contractor information, offer strategies, market reports, client reviews for his company, an offer to buy with cash, an offer to buy non-contingent. There's all kinds of information that he piles into his high note, and he can reuse that. So that's another way to get people to sign in because you're giving them something of value, and there's a lot lower likelihood that they are going to give you bad information when you do something like that. So that was another pretty cool idea from Cameron there. Finally, Deb Bly out in Houston said that She brings property lists, solds, actives, other things that could be interesting to a prospective buyer. Hey, maybe they didn't hear about certain properties for sale. That could also be worked into a high note or into a QR code of some sort, or just on paper. I think that's what she's doing, a little low tech there. So that was some of the main ideas on how to really make the most of your open house in this new and changing market where everybody is working a lot harder for each deal. So what's the next one? Contingent clients, working with contingent clients. So the first thing is, let's make them non-contingent. I don't know if you're familiar with HomeLight, but our company is partnered up with HomeLight. They are a national firm, a tech company out of the Bay Area. They do a lot of things. They have a mortgage company, but the real unique thing that they also have title and escrow. They have all kinds of stuff. But their core competency is helping clients navigate especially difficult markets like we just came out of, but even still, they're great tools to use because they will buy your home for you and allow you to go purchase non-contingent. They give you the bulk of the money up front, take the property out of your name so you're not worried about debt to income ratios. You go buy your property, you move in, get settled in, and then we as the agents come around behind them and sell the property on the open market, make sure we get maximum value for them, and then the difference comes to them in a second check after close. That's a great way to make them a non-contingent. Another idea from Deb out of Houston was to add on an additional $2,000 or some figure amount of an option fee. So this is above and beyond your earnest money deposit. Basically, the idea is, hey, you take my offer, my contingent offer. Let's say you're not using HomeLight or some other competitor that does a similar program. And you say, listen, if we can't perform, that money's yours now. That's an option fee that is yours if we cannot follow through and make this contingent sale work. So that was a pretty good idea that I hadn't heard anyone talk about before. So Jay Bond is another killer. He's got a market that is primarily second home and retirement type properties. So he deals with a lot of contingent type sales. And one of the things he makes sure to do is just properly explain the differences of a contingent buyer. For example, you're probably well aware that as a listing agent, you're going to look at a contingent sale with a buyer who hasn't even got their home on the market quite differently than someone who is listed or is listed and under contract or is listed and under contract with contingencies removed or is listed and under contract and days away from closing. Like, those are all quite different scenarios, right, as far as what it means to be a contingent buyer. So he said to make sure and explain all of that, which we ought to anyways if we're dealing with someone who needs to sell and buy at the same time. And also educate them saying, listen, we are contingent, so you may have to, not negotiate so hard on price, maybe do some other things to sweeten the deal to make sure that seller is going to be happy with our offer. So just kind of expectation settings and really educational conversations with buyers who also need to sell. And then Karen Van Ness brought up some good ideas, one of which I actually just went through myself. I haven't gone to the extent that she does, but the idea is to do your own diligence as the listing agent, right? If an agent comes to you and says, I've got a buyer, but they need to sell, well, it's not going to be just a brief conversation, right? We need to have information on the property. We need to have an idea of where they want to list. We need to know what the property condition is. We need to do our own comparisons and look at our own comps to see if we agree with their list price. We need to make sure that it's competitively marketed and priced, and that we feel comfortable if we were in that agent's shoes listing that property over there, that it would sell as quickly as we need it to for our seller, right? In addition, she actually counters with some kind of aggressive terms, like you're not allowed to accept another contingent buyer. So, hey, we'll go with your contingency, but we don't need to string up a row of these things going down the line because they will only encourage conflict and problems and basically give more opportunity for things to go wrong if we were to do that. So she counters that way. And she also goes into depth with a conversation with that agent to really get an understanding of the reason and the motivation and where that pain point is for that buyer, why they're selling and buying at the same time. Do they have to sell? Or is there some life event that's got them moving urgently, or is this just kind of a want? because that is also going to influence your decision whether or not to move forward with that contingent buyer. So that's kind of a perspective from both the buyer side and the seller side on working with contingent clients. But yeah, it's good advice in general, no matter where you're in, even if you're not in the middle of a transaction, just to have those conversations with clients, right? So that was working with contingent clients. And then the third one is long-term follow-up strategies, right? So Colton Whitney is in Orange County. He leads a big team and is doing huge volume as well. And he reminded us that I think only 5% of conversions take place within the first 30 days. And we went into talking about automations with long-term follow-up versus traditional follow-up by yourself or an ISA team or someone helping you through the process, right? So the goal is to do as much authentic traditional follow-up as possible and to leave the robots and the computers and the websites to do that grunt work when you haven't really made contact with the client yet, right? So you want to have as much authentic communication with that prospect as possible. And once you've had, one solid conversation with the prospect, at that point it's kind of time to move towards personal text messages and phone calls as opposed to letting the machines take over. Because, as Lauren Taylor mentioned to us, authenticity can be, or automations can be the killer of authenticity. The reason she says that is because so many of them are scripted, and it's to the educated, maybe more fine-tuned person out there who's not just kind of blowing through emails and texts and not paying attention, it can strike them as obvious that it's not a real person. We do our best to use tools that are great and that blur those lines, but we want to be authentic at all times. So one thing that she mentioned that you can use if you're doing a bulk email or a bulk text or something like that is to keep it really brief. Don't make it look like some automated campaign that's large and long. And some great questions that she mentioned. One of them is like a one-sentence email where you might not even have anything in the body at all. It's just the subject line that says, have you given up on the goal of buying your home this year? Or something like that. Like something that just feels very direct. It can be vague and blasted out to a lot of people, but it also can seem very direct, like you're just talking to them because it's been a while since you chatted with them. So I thought that was a great idea as well. John Glutch popped up on this topic as well for us and reminded us that it is not our job to meet someone and set up a Paragon search or an MLS search for them and then say sayonara, let me know when you see something you like. We want to figure out if they're not moving forward right now, what is the root cause? Is it because they just haven't found what they're looking for yet? Or is it because there's some fear or concern about the market in general that's got them from keeping them from moving forward? So we need to get that figured out first. And then if it's not fear of the market, if it's really just they haven't found the property yet, well, that's where we got to, lace up the bootstraps and go find properties for them. We have to go digging through expireds for sale by owners. We have to be looking through off-market searches. For us, that's using Raven. We have to do what it takes to try and find something that suits their needs because, like I said, it's not our job to set up a search and say goodbye. We can turn these buyers who aren't finding what they want into now buyers if we can go out and find the property. For example, if there's 2 or 3 buildings in a condo complex that they like, well, let's go through there and start dialing one by one. Or let's do a marketing campaign. Let's do a door drop. Let's do something to go find that property for them. We really got to earn our money a bit more. It's a little bit harder nowadays, and that's kind of what we're up to. So the other idea is that, let's see here. If it's not the fact that they're just not finding the property they want and that there's some other cause, we need to figure out what they're waiting for and get to the root, like what's going to be different 6 months from now than now. Maybe depending on what kind of client you're working with, you got to try and assess that personality type as best as you can on the fly and go through the numbers. Like, hey, how much are you paying rent right now? Do you think that you'd be better off not paying the next, let's call it $30,000 in rent for the next 6 months, or do you think you'd be better with that money going towards your own mortgage, right? Let's figure out what it is that's keeping them from moving forward, and try and address that solution and explain that right now is probably as good a time as 3 to 6 months from now, or whatever their timeline is, to move, and then go hunting for them. Figure out what it is that they need and remind them what you're doing. So those were some ideas on the long-term follow-ups. Finally, Dan Beer, who is Kyle Whissel's partner, chimed in and said, listen, this is his opinion. I don't know if I agree with it or not, but he said he doesn't ever want his clients receiving MLS notifications at all. He wants them only seeing properties from his personal branded site, so that every time a property pops up, it also pops up with his face and his name and his contact information. And there's it makes sense to me. There's a lot to be said for that. He also likes the idea of setting up an MLS search, but sending it to himself, so that when properties pop up, you review them real quickly. Maybe this is weekly, maybe this is more often, and you just send them directly. Or you quickly do an MLS search maybe once a week and say, hey, I hand selected these properties. I thought they might be a good fit for you because of whatever, fill in the blank. There's a yard in the back that has a pool. I know that's what you're looking for. Or this is a single story and I know you don't want 2 stories. Come up with something from the conversation. Say, hey, I went and found these ones for you. I think they'd be a good fit. Are you free this weekend? Are you free tomorrow afternoon? And really make it personal, so that it seems as though you're just going out of your way, only working for them, when in actuality you kind of just ran a quick search for them and fired it off directly. So those are some great tips on long-term follow-up strategies in this shifting market, working with contingent buyers and sellers, and of course making the most out of your open houses in this market. I hope you found this helpful. As always, if you would be interested in joining the conversation yourself, I'd be happy to get you an invitation to get a link and check it out yourself. Or if you've got any questions or comments, I'm happy to chat with you as well. Look forward to talking to you soon. See ya. Thanks for checking out the video. I hope you found it valuable and that there's something in there that you can implement into your business today. If you'd like more information, I'd love to be a resource for you. I'd also love to connect you with the Mastermind directly if you'd rather see that instead of catching my recaps. And if you're interested in joining the Fast Forward Network, DM me here and I'll hook you up. Talk to you soon.